We are back for another edition of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, I am Jason Floyd. That is the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. We're here to talk UFC Austin, which goes down tomorrow there in Austin, Texas. And, well, all you got to do is look at the fight card, and you know it's in front of fans. You know it's not a UFC Apex card. It's a nice little fight night card. Of course, we did lose one fight earlier on today. The weigh-ins are in the books. Of course, if you had Costa Garcia in your lineups, well, you got to go and make some changes because that fight is no longer happening. Of course, as always, appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the podcast. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button, whether you watch us on YouTube or if you're listening to us over on the podcasting platforms. Leave a rating and review. Much appreciate that. Of course, subscribe to the channel. We got our Discord channel. A ton of great conversation going on there, not just about MMA, but other sports action going on. Of course, totally free to join. Of course, we got our merch store as well. We got the DraftKings contest. All those links are in the description below, but it is a Friday afternoon, early Friday afternoon here on the East Coast, just after 12 o'clock Eastern time. How's it going, Pete?
What's going on, man? It's been quite a week over here, but happy we were able to pull off putting the show together. And I actually think that the timing kind of worked out perfect for this card because we had some interesting weigh-ins. We had Jalin Turner just weigh in at 157. He took the fight on short notice, stepping up against Bobby Green, and then went in the back and within 5 minutes shed a pound somehow and weighed in at 156 pounds. I'm hearing a lot of people say he did not look good on the scale. I don't think many people do look good on the scale, and he is a fighter that cuts a tremendous amount of weight. He's a massive, massive lightweight. I definitely think that he kind of looked like a zombie, but, I mean, that's kind of expected. It's not ideal circumstances. He did decline the fight when they initially offered it to him. And then I'm sure they called back with a larger amount of money, and and it forced him to basically take the gamble on the fight against Bobby Green. So he did make weight. I didn't think he looked horrible. I didn't think he looked good. And then of course we did just have Miesha Tate weigh in at 135.5 pounds. So all the fights besides Steve Garcia and Melquizael Costa are official. But yeah, I did have Costa in a lot of my lineups, Jason. So like I was siding with him. I liked the grappling upside in that matchup, and I actually liked him, potentially hurting Steve Garcia. But that fight is scrapped. So now we're gonna have to pivot to some other options. And I definitely think that the popular play in the co-main event will be getting to the high floor of Bobby Green, just because you have a guy stepping up on short notice, kind of gassed out against Dan Hooker previously, and you just see everybody saw him on the scale. He looked bad, so I think Bobby Green for the co-main event is going to be pretty chalky.
Yeah, I will tell you this, and we are in the state of Texas. Get ready for some split decisions. That's going to happen. That was actually one of the things I was kind of thinking about this morning. It's like, man, do you just throw a little sprinkle? Bobby Green wins via split decision.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Bobby Green, right, and I'm actually on the other side of that fight. I like Jalin Turner in the fight just because I think we've seen the decline of Bobby Green's chin to a point. As he's aged, he's taken a ton of damage, but he's also defensively reckless. Like he keeps his hands low, relies on the shoulder roll, the Philly shell a lot. He's definitely the higher volume guy. Probably will have the better cardio. Has been fighting top-tier competition just like Jalin Turner. But, like, when he gets hit with power shots, I don't know, man. I've just seen those legs go a little bit too much. And I know Turner looked terrible on the scale, but we just need a round and a half. In and a round and a half, I think it could happen. So, but, yeah, Bobby Green screws around, too. That's also why I don't want to back him so much if like, the large field is, because he's winning a lot of fights and then just starts playing around. And then he ends up, getting – just like the tail end of the round getting taken down or just kind of just screwing around. And, it's never comfortable when you're relying on Bobby Green to come through just because you just never know between his defense and also his IQ.
Yeah, when, I was kind of thinking about that fight, and one of the things to let you know, they're actually both represented by the same management company. So kind of interesting one on that one in terms of it. But, I said this on my podcast on Wednesday night. If you told me that Jalin Turner had 6 to 8 weeks to prepare for this matchup, I probably would really be in support of him in this one. But to me, it's a short notice. He is a bigger 55er. It does take a lot for him to get down to 55. So we'll talk about that fight here in a moment. Of course, I mentioned about that DraftKings contest. It is live. All you got to do is click right there in the show notes. Congratulations to Gene Holloway, 30, taking it down. I want to say he's taking that contest down multiple times here. He had 5 out of 6 winners in the contest there. 2 weeks ago, his only loser would being Charles Johnson, but kudos to him. Had Aileen Perez in his lineup. 3 of his 4 winners, or 3 of his 5 winners, all had over 100 points, including, you'd think I was going to forget, Jose Johnson.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. My goodness. I think I had like 2 winners in my lineup. It was not a good lineup for me. It just...
I just went down. I didn't do much better than you. Let's just first off, full disclosure, I did not do much better than you, but you were apparently trying to pull a Jason and almost nearly finishing in last place in the contest.
Hey man, if you ain't first, you're last. So I don't know, but hey, I'll tell you what, it was a rough week for me.
Bro,
who'd I have?
You had 2 winners in the contest.
Okay,
you had
bro.
One of the winners, Talbot, who only got you 68 points.
I couldn't believe that.
If I screen refresh, let me get back. Let me get back to this lineup here. You had Uros Medic with his 6 points. Then you had JSP with 40 points, and Helger with his 50 points. For a loss, 50 points is not bad, but obviously not what you wanted there. Then you had Machado at 36 points, and then Aileen Perez was your second winner at 88 points.
I felt so confident about her, but it's women's MMA, so I tend to not lock that in. I should have just locked her in all my lineups because she was a slate breaker. But yeah, man, I'll tell you what, the JSP situation was hilarious against Joe Anderson Brito. He's sitting there taking him down, ragdolling him, talking to him, talking trash. Get up, boy. Try to get up and do something. 2 minutes later, proceeds to get up and choke out JSP. And I thought it was absolutely hilarious, even though as somebody who rostered JSP, the fight film, everything I thought would happen, happened. JSP has a tendency to get in his neck caught. That was just idiotic. And it was a beautiful ninja choke. It was absolutely beautiful. And, props to Joe Anderson Brito for making one of the most hilarious moments in the UFC history.
Paul, appreciate the comment there in the YouTube chat. I always appreciate everyone chiming in here on the Fight HQ podcast as we're going to break this fight card down for you. Now, Pete, as we talk about game theory here and as before we start kind of breaking down the fights here, and, I think when I first started looking at the salaries earlier on this week, obviously the first thing I started looking for is, okay, who are going to be those underdogs? Who are going to be the underdogs I was looking at? And I will tell you the one that I immediately looked at, the price point, and we really don't know what he's going to look like at the 135-pound division. The price point of Deiveson Figueiredo, whether we're talking on DraftKings or on FanDuel, that to me is the one that stuck out to me the most in terms of the underdogs.
Yeah, for sure. You know that I'm a big Rob Font guy. I like backing Rob. I'm cool with Rob. I want Rob to win this bout. I think it's a difficult matchup. I think it's a great opportunity because you are, going up against a former champ, and if you get a win over him, it's huge. And on paper, it does look like Rob should be able to do well because he's going to be the bigger guy. And sometimes that power is negated when people move up. I just think that Deiveson Figueiredo, whether it's 125, 135, 145, I think he hits damn hard. I think he hits so hard, and he's so opportunistic with his grappling that he can snatch up the neck. He has an excellent guillotine choke. So, and then you see that Deiveson Figueiredo is working with Henry Cejudo on wrestling and all that, implementing takedowns. And it's just like we've seen Rob struggle in the past against Corey Sandhagen, who I think has developed his skills tremendously. But, Sandhagen in a straight-up wrestling match is going to get ragdolled by Henry Cejudo. So, that's kind of like MMA math, but it's also like talking to development. And I think Deiveson Figueiredo working with Henry Cejudo is massive. So I just think, the weight could make Rob Font I'm really looking forward to see what ownership is, because I feel like sometimes people really overweight the weight class changes sometimes, where like people are struggling to make limits. Like Deiveson Figueiredo was struggling to make 125 pounds. I just think that it was the easiest path to, having the belt. And then when you have all these rematches against Brandon Moreno, I mean, like, he's kind of stuck in that weight class for years upon years. Now he gets to go up there. Hopefully he's going to be refreshed and rejuvenated, have an endless gas tank, and it's a 3-round bout. Like, I feel like Deiveson's work rate's just going to be tremendous, and I want Rob to win. He has an excellent jab, but I do think it's a very dangerous fight for him.
Yeah, if you want to check out our friends over there at Stochastic, their ownership projections are now out. We appreciate everyone that's been taking advantage of the offer that we have in the show notes. Much appreciated. That's a great way to show your support for what me and Pete do here every week. Of course, subscribe to the channel, and not really as surprising that Deiveson Figueiredo is going to be your most popular underdog over there. I mean, I don't think anyone's really surprised by that one. There's a couple of fights that really looking out to me is this is boom bust fight for me. Zach Reese, Cody Brundage, don't feel good either way. I don't know what does a Zach Reese look like if this fight, if Cody Brundage is able to weather an early storm for him, get this into the second, maybe even the third round. That one sticks there. I think Joe Solecki is a interesting GPP play. We have seen his ability to control a fight on the ground, but to me, if he can get that submission finish, that's one that kind of sticks out to me just as a GPP play. Of course, we lost the Costa and Garcia fight. That was going to be one that stuck out to me as well. And I don't know, Pete, if you've been monitoring this one this week, the Jamey-Lyn and Veronica Hardy betting odds has been fluctuating. So I don't know if there is some tout that put out one side, another tout put out the other side, but this is a thing that I want to say Jamey-Lyn started at like minus 175. It got almost to a pick 'em. Now it's been all the way bet back up. So it's just something to kind of pay attention to over there as well. I will say this in terms of GPPs of high end fighters I'm looking at in terms of salaries. Punahele Soriano is one of the guys that I'm looking at, and that's as much of it having faith in Puna in this situation. It's also betting against Dustin Stoltzfus.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think the Zach Reese Cody Brundage fight is a low level fight. I think that's a Dana White's Contender Series fight. Like Zach Reese didn't really wow me in his Dana White Contender Series fight. I mean, he has good submission skills. He's okay with striking. Cody Brundage was probably the better wrestler in this situation and will land a takedown. But I just can't trust Cody Brundage to this point to last 15 minutes. He has been put in terrible positions. Obviously, it's against top-tier competition. I do not hate the absolute punt play of Cody Brundage going out there at 6,900. It's just that he is 2-4 in the UFC. Cedric Dumas, Rodolfo Vieira, Mikhail Oleszejczuk, 3 losses. Talk about the previous performance that was technically a win against Jacob Malkoun. Nick Maximov lost. Got a fluky KO over Tresean Gore and a submission over Dalcha Lugambula after getting beat from pillar to post. I'm not big on this Zach Reese guy either. So like I don't really hate the punt play for Cody Brundage out of a good camp. It's just be careful what you play. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing single entry, be careful because it's a fighter that I don't have any faith in. But he is a part of a good camp, but even good camps just can't get through to some people. So I'm going to be underweight to that fight, even though I do think it finishes inside the distance. I can see something like Cody Brundage looking really good until he doesn't, and then he gets finished. So, but yeah, I mean, outside of that, the line movement of the Jamey-Lyn and Veronica Hardy is quite surprising. The physicality is something that I'm always leaning towards in women's MMA, and Jamey-Lyn is massive for the division. Veronica Hardy has that X factor of having Dan Hardy in her corner, like a great MMA mind. Whenever there's funny line fluctuation and movement, I tend to stay away. So I'm probably going to be a little underweight to that fight in hopes that the over hits. But yeah, I'm I'm excited to see where you stand on some of these fights. Puna's a good a good top end option. I just think he's a little expensive.
No, I understand that. I mean, and just looking at, and I love to look at 20% and under in terms of ownership projections. And man, there are a lot that stick out to me of, trying to get some leverage on the field, and we'll get into some of these as we do on. Let's get right into the fights here. Of course, our main event, nice lightweight matchup here as you got Arman Tsarukyan taking on Beneil Dariush. Bill Dariush has a plus 245 betting underdog, minus 300 for Arman Tsarukyan. Tsarukyan is $9,200 on DK, $22 on FanDuel, and for Dariush, he is $7,000 on DK and $13 on FanDuel. And Pete, I thought it was kind of interesting this week where Dariush was, basically kind of taking this fight isn't exactly the fight that makes a lot of sense for him. But to me, this is very much old school matchmaking by the UFC, where we see the UFC go in with this mindset of, okay, we've got that vet that's been around for a long time, and we got this up-and-coming rising star. And one of the things as I was looking into the stats on Tsarukyan and just kind of thinking about Beneil Dariush is, when Tsarukyan's had success, he's been able to utilize the takedowns. But we also know what Dariush can do on the ground, Pete.
Yeah, when I looked at the number and I saw the salaries, I'm like, what the hell is going on with this? Because, to me, you're talking about Beneil Dariush, who was just fighting Charles Oliveira. And it was, very close to winning to winning the belt. You know what I mean? And he's always been the dark horse within the division, and now all of a sudden he's this massive underdog. It's confusing to me. But then I went back and I watched the fight film, and it's like, okay, Dariush has good takedowns. He has good jiu-jitsu. He's a powerful left hand. He likes to kick, but he is susceptible on the feet. He's a little wild. And I do think that the work rate can get to him. I really do. And, when I went back and I watched Arman Tsarukyan's performance, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, he kind of had a stinker against Joaquim Silva recently. And it's just he was a massive favorite, should have went in there and made quick work. Eventually he did get the finish, but he got rocked on the feet by a big left hook. And, Beneil Dariush has a big left hand. Can see him landing it and hurting Tsarukyan, but I do think the wrestling is superior for Tsarukyan. I really do. I think that he can chain wrestle better. We've seen Dariush defend takedowns against Mateusz Gamrot, but I did see Mateusz Gamrot have success when he started to chain. And then I went back and I watched the Gamrot and Tsarukyan fight. That's one hell of a fight. I love that fight. That was an excellent, just high level MMA bout that I recommend everybody go back and watch. I just think the wrestling is going to be a lot for Beneil Dariush to deal with. And then where Dariush was the better striker than Gamrot on the feet, I still think Tsarukyan's the better striker than Dariush. So I do think that Tsarukyan's going to have his way in this bout. And I actually think that he finishes him in round 3 or round 4. It may be tough early, but I do see Beneil Dariush getting taxed. This is a guy who hasn't been 5 rounds in the UFC. So I know Tsarukyan can go 5. I know Tsarukyan can go in there and have a high-paced fight as he did against Mateusz Gamrot, where he defended 15 takedowns. He was taken down. It was a high-paced bout. So I'm okay with getting to Arman Tsarukyan relative to the field. And he's going to be the most popular play on the slate, and I agree with it. I really do. I think that he's an excellent play this week, from takedowns to KO upside and 5 rounds to work with. I think he breaks Dariush over 5.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking this fight goes a little longer. So, I mean, okay. I think on the betting side, maybe looking at the over 3.5, maybe even the over 4.5. I think that if you're looking, to me, I was kind of looking at Tsarukyan wins by TKO KO, just because I don't think he necessarily plays on the mat and potentially plays with the jiu-jitsu of Dariush. I kind of do feel like this fight does go, I think at least hits the 3rd round, if not the 4th.
Yeah, I just think when you start playing 4.5, that's dangerous. I do think the 2.5 is a smart play. And then it's kind of like anybody's game. It could happen early in round 3. It could happen at the back half of round 3. But I do think that from what I'm seeing of the work rate, Dariush is great and he's a high level fighter. But I just don't think he has the cardio to last. And he's an older guy. And you know what I mean? Tsarukyan's this new age prospect The UFC knows what they're doing. Dariush can totally win this fight. If you want to get to him, I get it. 7,000's a tremendous value for one of the best fighters on the planet. I just think that styles make fights, and we saw Dariush pick up a win over Gamrot. We saw Tsarukyan technically lose to Gamrot. I think Tsarukyan is going to beat Dariush here.
Yeah, I just looking at our best fight odds, and Tsarukyan inside distance plus 110, Tsarukyan via TKO KO plus 130. I'd rather just take the plus 110 just in case he does submit him. If you're looking to play that prop, that's the way I would potentially go. We'll talk about PrizePicks later on in the show. Let's go over to the co-main event. You got Jalin Turner taking on Bobby Green. Bobby Green plus 175, minus 210 for Jalin Turner. Turner 8,900 DK, $19 on FanDuel for Bobby Green. He's 7,600 on DK, $12 on FanDuel. Of course, he was supposed to take on Dan Hooker initially, and as I recall, it was supposed to be a 5-round fight between him and Dan Hooker. Of course, this now will only be a 3-round fight between these two guys. Of course, Bobby Green made a little news this week as him and Team Tsarukyan got into it, which I joked on my podcast this week, Pete. I said, so if somehow Bobby Green wins, Arman Tsarukyan wins, are we magically going to get Arman Tsarukyan, Bobby Green, UFC Apex headliner, and all of a sudden, magically, the UFC has surveillance camera footage of this brawl?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting. I would be down for it. I would be down for it. But technically, for rankings-wise, it makes no sense other than building your guy. It's just very strange. Listen, we're cutting weight. Tension is high. There's a lot on the line. And then you got people, they put you in the same hotel blocks. And then, you know what I mean? There needs to be way more staffing personnel to ensure that stuff like this doesn't happen. Because a lot of these guys are testy. And especially when you start talking about rankings and camps. And, it's just listen, everybody needs, for the most part, to be separated and kept separate. And it's the fight game. It's what's going to happen. I'm happy that nothing was canceled because of it. Because Arman Tsarukyan did. I watched the video. Arman Tsarukyan did hit Bobby Green in the face. It looked like it was just a slap. But I'm just happy that nothing came from it and that we still have the main and co-main event. But yeah, this fight between Jalin Turner and Bobby Green is super interesting because we have Jalin Turner stepping up on short notice, cutting a tremendous amount of weight. Didn't have the best cardio in his previous matchup. And Bobby Green, excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I was just kind of looking over some various props in terms of this one, and I feel like this, on the betting side, this may be kind of a live betting situation, especially if this fight hits a second. If it gets a third, it's a 1-1. That's where I think you kind of do like Bobby Green a little bit in this situation. I do wonder for Turner's camp, maybe are they going to push a little bit of the takedown aspect of this one, and try not to get into a straight up kickboxing matchup. I mean, look, Bobby's last fight was kind of an anomaly where he went out there and finished Grant Dawson as quickly as he did. That's just not what we've seen from Bobby Green over the years. I mean, this is a guy that, to me, the longer the fight goes, the more I do favor him. I mean, I'll say this, on the FanDuel side of the equation, Bobby Green at $12, man, is tempting. That is very tempting. That is a more tempting number than the 7,600 over on DK. I mean, I see why you would get there, but I would also say I think on the Turner side of the equation, maybe that's where you got to kind of start looking at the ownership aspect of this and saying, depending on the type of field that you're in, maybe you can find a little bit of leverage on the field. Maybe you think a lot of people are going to side with the Bobby Green side of the equation, and then you go to the Jalin Turner side just to get that leverage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at ownership right now. I don't think it's correct. I personally will be very surprised if Jalin Turner has this massive ownership attached to him, giving all these intangibles. If it is, in fact, correct and we don't get an update pre-lock, it makes Bobby Green very interesting. You know what I mean? It makes Bobby Green very interesting. There are a lot of things going against Jalin Turner in this situation. I am backing Jalin Turner in the bout. The reason being is he has massive power. You're talking about Luke Rockhold's sparring partner. You're talking about a big guy that has sparred with the likes of all these people, who is hurt and dropped Mateusz Gamrot. He's been in there with some of the top tier athletes. I thought he was going to mollywopped Dan Hooker. And he head kicked him, and he should have had him out of there. He beat the hell out of Dan Hooker. But he really just emptied his gas tank and didn't find the finish. And then that, in the back half of the fight, he just could not keep up. That is my worry with backing Jalin Turner here. And that's kind of to your point where as the fight goes on, Bobby Green's a tremendous live betting and late round type of fighter to come on and hopefully not be behind too much to win a decision. But I think like this is going to be an action-packed fight. I've seen Bobby Green get hurt and dropped countless times. I kind of think we see Jalin Turner knock him out. And then or maybe just drop him and then submit him. He has some freaky long arms and can really just attack the neck really well with head and arm chokes. So you talk about a beautiful Darce choke. I just think that we could see Bobby Green get slept one way or another here.
Yeah, the length that Jalin Turner has for this division, it's absolutely crazy. And look, he is a guy that does cut a decent amount of weight, especially when you're talking about the fact of taking this fight on 10 days notice. I want to say is when he took this fight. Getting down there, that to me is like, if I'm going to offer a concern on Jalin Turner, is if this fight hits the third round, where's that gas tank, especially if he's going super hard. And that's kind of one of those things. And on the DFS side of the equation, I mean, we just got to kind of think about how the fight can play out. If he's going into this fight thinking I don't have 15 minutes of cardio, he may go balls to the wall for 7.5 minutes.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You really only need one shot, and he may only need one round. The one thing that I thought was interesting is I went and I looked at his social media because I want to be like, all right, was this guy even like training? Is this just a paycheck opportunity? He's training. And I was looking at his physique. He looks shredded. He looks lean. He looked good. He's wrestling with Deron Winn, picking Deron Winn up and slamming Deron Winn. And Deron Winn's a fantastic wrestler. And he's doing rounds with him. And I'm seeing him doing lots of wrestling and lots of striking. So I'm like, all right, maybe this is like he declined because he didn't like the money. He kind of talked about how like he really had no choice after they called him back. And it's just like, it seems like they might have added the zero or something.
That could be taken many ways.
Yes.
When you say that, the first thought that came to my mind is it was their way of saying, if you don't take this fight, you're not going to have another fight for 4 months.
I thought about that, and then the way I'm seeing everybody see interpret it negatively like that, and I thought it could be, but then the more I thought about it, he kind of had a smirk to it. So I'm starting to think it's financial.
It's a cat and mouse situation when you're the guy stepping up on short notice.
You got the leverage, man.
And you're talking about it's a co-main event, and it's sometimes you got to know how to play the game and how to get that additional money out of the UFC if the UFC wants to keep that fight on the card. And obviously when you're talking about, especially if this was a UFC Apex card, you don't have leverage.
Yeah, good point.
When it's in front of fans, the fighters do have a little bit of leverage there, and hopefully we see more fights in front of fans and getting out of the warehouse, as some people like to call it there. Let's move over. Next up, we got the Rob Font taking on Deiveson Figueiredo. Rob Font minus 130 betting favorite, plus 110 for Deiveson Figueiredo. Font $8,800 on DK, $16 on FanDuel. Figueiredo $7,400 on DK and $12 on FanDuel. You kind of started talking about this a little bit earlier, and I'm in total agreement with you here. Is you're talking about where Deiveson Figueiredo trains, and as I was thinking about this matchup, I'm like, when you think about that fight ready team, like how do they not look at this matchup? And look, we both love Rob, but how do they not look at this matchup and go, Corey Sandhagen on a busted up, injured shoulder took down Rob Font 7 times, and literally Rob had 0 offense in that matchup. And that's where, I'm looking at this as the underdog situation going, if you're Figueiredo, I know you love to throw hands, but, man, that takedown path is there, Pete.
Yeah, it definitely is there. And I think that Deiveson Figueiredo, the power's there. Will it translate to 135 pounds? I think it will. I already know that the submission skills are tremendous, and I think from a submission aspect, he's clearly superior over Rob Font. From a striking, it's interesting because we've seen with the jab of Brandon Moreno, and Rob Font has an excellent jab. I think the way to counter that jab is to make him worry about the takedowns, loop shots over top, so like overhand and overhand right over the top, and also really just butcher that lead leg of Rob Font to make that jab a little bit ineffective and make him a little unstable. I think that I'm back in Deiveson Figueiredo here, even though personally I'm rooting for Rob. I want Rob to win. I want Rob to go out there and get a beautiful win. But I just think that from a DFS construction standpoint, I think that the salaries are way too off. I think this is it should be an 8,200, 8,000 fight. Like, I think it's very, very close. Some intangibles surrounding both sides. Will Rob make adjustments? Yes, he made adjustments in previous matchups that he struggled in. Will Deiveson make adjustments to this new weight class? Yes. Could he look worse? Yeah, he could look better. I think that he's going to look better in this situation. So I'm back in Deiveson Figueiredo here at 7,400, despite personally rooting for Rob Font. But I think it's an excellent matchup. What I've been doing lately is if I'm struggling in a matchup and I'm not playing 150 lineups and I'm doing single entries, and you know that fight's going to attract a ton of ownership, maybe pivot. Maybe pivot away from it and just put yourself in a safer construction, and you could get a dud performance. But I do not think that a dud performance for Deiveson Figueiredo in 3 rounds is possible. So I'll be going with Figueiredo here at 7,400.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely in terms of, favorite underdogs. And I know, one of the popular questions we get is about, those value plays, and you start talking value plays, and, even if you go up to 7,400 below, Deiveson Figueiredo to me is going to be one of those guys that I'm going to look at. And to me, it's also about knowing that camp and knowing the coaches that are in that camp, not just Henry Cejudo, but everybody that's involved in that fight ready camp. You got to, like it there. And how does Rob Font bounce back? I mean, but I think if you're looking for a leverage spot on this card, Rob Font may be that leverage spot you look at as a higher end salary guy that, I mean, look, he's still one of the top guys in this division. Next up, we've got Sean Brady taking on Kelvin Gastelum. Kelvin Gastelum back at 170 pounds. He is a plus 100 betting underdog, minus 120 for Sean Brady. Brady is 8,200 on DK, $15 on FanDuel. For Gastelum, he's 8,000 on DK, $14 on FanDuel. I mean, I think in terms of a fight aspect, this is probably one of my favorite fights on this card. Just because of, Kelvin Gastelum is one of these guys where, if there was a 175-pound weight class, Kelvin Gastelum would be perfect for that weight class. It's just, and he just wasn't big enough at 85. I mean, and he was still competitive at 85, but he just wasn't big enough. But to me is, how does, and one thing about Kelvin is, if this matchup does hit the ground, I do wonder about how does he handle the jiu-jitsu of Sean Brady.
Yeah, that's the X factor here. I think that Brady's clearly at a disadvantage on the feet. I think that was quite exposed against Belal Muhammad. He really struggled when he was unable to get the takedown. He went 0-5 in the takedown department, and Belal's volume and pressure just broke him. And Belal's not a finisher. So for that to happen, somewhat of a red flag, if I'm being honest. And I really like Sean Brady. I like the camp that he's a part of. I think that, regionally he was a guy that dominated with ground control. Found several submissions in the UFC against Christian Aguilera at low level. Jake Matthews was somewhat surprising given Jake Matthews' his ground skills. Nice victory over Michael Chiesa, Ismail Nurdiev, Court McGee. All fighters that he should pick up wins over. It's just like Kelvin Gastelum has fought everybody. If I went and I listed everybody, he's had it's ridiculous who he's fought, from Robert Whittaker to Drakkar to Bisping to Weidman. I can keep going on. Tyron Woodley, he's been in dog fights between welterweight and middleweight, and I hopefully think that he's figured out the welterweight weight cut. He did look good on a scale. This is a guy that has fought some tremendous names of guys who have tried to take him down. Ian Heinisch has tried to take him down, Robert Whittaker, Jacare Souza, Chris Weidman. I worry about the jiu-jitsu. I do, Jason. I think it's a fair point, because when he is taken down, it's not his best attribute. It's somewhat of a weak point. We've seen him lose to Jack Hermanson via heel hook. We've seen him lose to Chris Weidman to an arm triangle choke, and if Sean Brady has anything, he has excellent chokes. So an excellent mounted guillotine, excellent head and arm chokes. I worry about that, but I also think that the striking difference is so massive that Kelvin Gastelum could really knock out Sean Brady or just sprawl and brawl his way to a 15-minute dominant decision. So I have to pick Kelvin Gastelum here. Even though I think it's an excellent buy low spot on Sean Brady, who I'm still relatively high on, it's just like, is it too much to give him a guy who's fought everybody in Kelvin Gastelum? So I think it is. I'm going to be siding with Kelvin Gastelum here at 8,000. But if you are, in disagreement with me, I think that this fight in general is just a value fight. So I think you have to get to it one way or another. 8,200 for Sean Brady is fine, but this could come down to damage versus control. And I hope Kelvin Gastelum does not get submitted, because I think that if he doesn't get submitted, he wins this fight.
Look, I'll tell you the one prop that has been sticking out to me all this week on this one, and you bring up some great points of how this could end via finish. I'm seeing plus 110 fight goes the distance.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I definitely don't hate it. We've seen. It's just like Sean Brady, he looked bad against Belal Muhammad. Belal's damn good. He's very good. But when you have a non-finisher finish you, and Kelvin Gastelum has excellent power, I mean, this is a guy that's knocked down Jacare Souza, Michael Bisping, Weidman, Vitor Belfort, Tim Kennedy, Neil Magny. You know what I mean? Like, those are all fighters he's knocked down. If he can just sprawl and brawl, I think that it's his fight to lose.
Yeah, it's just one of those things of I've battled myself on whether I like this fight for GPP or not. Why is it I see the winner getting like 70 points, 75 points?
I hear you, and the reason you're not wrong, and I that's what I like. I think initially I was fading the fight, and then the more I start looking at these underdogs, I can't get behind many of them. Yeah. So it's just like, it's a close fight. Yeah. And I want to spend up against some of these 9,000, high 8,000 options. So it's just like, what do I do now? And I really do think that Kelvin Gastelum, every fight starts standing up. As long as he's not put on his back in a terrible submission spot, I think he's going to be okay.
This is my fear with this fight in terms of a DFS aspect, is it just stays on the feet for 15 minutes and we have no knockdowns. And can the winner get to 80 points?
You think Brady could last 15 minutes on the feet with him?
I don't know if he can. I mean, I think it depends on can he make this a fight up against the fence and grind on him, I mean, look, I've seen Sean Brady fight from his regional days. I mean, I'll never forget. I called his fight against Colton Smith, which was it was supposed to be a CFFC show, but it ended up being a Shogun Fight show. And I remember going into that, the word was if he goes on and puts a highlight performance, he's getting in the UFC. That never happened.
I remember you telling me that. I think I remember.
Yeah, Eddie Alvarez played a major role in Sean Brady getting into the UFC.
Well, it all helps, right? I mean,
by the way, is it? Yes, tomorrow night you got Eddie Alvarez versus Mike Perry in BKFC.
I know. I don't know. I was looking at that. I don't know how to feel about that. I do think that Eddie's probably the cleaner boxer, but I just think that Mike Perry's built for bare knuckle. I really do.
Yes, he is.
You know what I mean? Like, there's few people like. I just think that that's his niche, and like I don't think that Eddie. I think Eddie's a tremendous fighter, and I think that he could land some combos. I just worry about the durability.
Yeah, my understanding is Mike Perry makes more money in BKFC than he ever did in the UFC, which is crazy.
Hey, kudos to him. Kudos to him.
Get those deals when you can, fighters. Get them when you can.
I feel like he's been in BKFC for 5 years, and he has 3 fights. He's got Luke Rockhold, Julian Lane, and somebody else he beat the hell out of.
He's been out of the UFC for some time. I'm just pulling up his Tapology.
I really think it's only like 3 fights.
The last time Mike Perry fought in the UFC was 2021. Since then, he fought in Triad Combat, and he's had 1, 2, 3. This will be his 4th BKFC fight.
Okay. So who is it? Julian Lane, Luke Rockhold, and who?
Michael Page.
That's right. That shit. I couldn't believe that happened.
By the way, if you saw the screenshots that are out there, it looks like the UFC, if they can get this deal finalized with Michael Page, they're looking to do Michael Page versus Kevin Holland. And I am surprised. I'm surprised by that matchmaking. I would have bet money they were going to put him up against a Russian wrestler to test his wrestling. But I guess it once again shows if you can strike, the UFC will make sure they get you in the right matchups.
Yeah. That's true.
And I would imagine, even though I know that they have become very good friends or buddy situation, I'm sure the UFC would love to do Michael Page versus Stephen Thompson.
I was just going to say,
but
that's
Page
the
and,
fight.
Page and Thompson have kind of come close over the last year or so. So we'll see what happens
that's
there.
the fight to make.
Yeah. Let's get back to the fights here. We got Joaquim Silva taking on Clay Guida. Clay Guida is a plus 255 betting underdog, minus 320 for Silva. Silva is 9,100 DK, $21 on FanDuel. For Clay, he is 7,100 DK, $8 on FanDuel. Clay is basically trying to let everyone know that retirement is not on his mind, even though, Clay, you are on the back nine, bro. You are on the back nine, Clay.
Yeah, I mean, so what I do is I look at all the fight film, and then I make my initial reads, and then figure out who I like in the fight. And then I go and I look at the salaries, and I see, okay, well, where could I talk myself into some underdogs? And I was trying to talk myself into Clay Guida. I just can't do it. And on paper, you can see that he's been the distance quite a lot. And, his durability's checked out for the most part, you would think. And then you go back and you watch some fight film, and, man, that Leonardo Santos fight, he hurt him to the body I don't know how many times, rocked him, had him out I don't know how many times, like so close. The referee, for whatever reason, didn't step in. We've seen Clay Guida's durability and chin somewhat deteriorate over time, as expected. You know what I mean? He's had a tremendous career. This is a guy who is an overhand away from winning a fight, a couple takedowns away from winning a round or a bout. He's just very skilled and very game. And if you are, lacking any cardio, he'll win the bout. He'll win the bout. So I don't hate the complete punt play of 7,100 Clay Guida. I just think that Joaquim Silva, he looked really good against Arman Tsarukyan until he got dumped on his head and then elbowed into oblivion. He hurt him. I think that he's going to hurt Clay Guida here. If you can develop a sprawl and a guillotine choke, I think that you can threaten Clay Guida and get him out of there. For the longest time, he was super susceptible to getting submitted. All these years at Team Alpha Male have definitely made his guillotine submission defense better. But I just think that one way or another, you can get him out at this stage of the game. And I think you got to just show him the door. Even though it hasn't happened, I think that Joaquim Silva can get him out, or at least damage him enough to win a decision. So I'll be picking Joaquim Silva here at 9,100. If he doesn't find an early KO, then I just think that he's definitely the more damaging fighter over 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough for me to back Clay Guida at this point. We've seen how this goes in mixed martial arts, and I do feel like this is a little bit of that kind of a showcase matchup for Silva more than maybe trying to get the veteran a win here. Next up, we got Punahele Soriano taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Stoltzfus, a plus 260 betting underdog, minus 330 for Puna. Puna 9,400 on DK, $21 on FanDuel, and Dustin is 6,800 DK, $9 on FanDuel. And, this is... To me, this is as much of it, and I know you said a little bit earlier, the pricing is what kind of scares you a little bit off Punahele Soriano here at 9,400 here, but to me, this is as much of betting against Dustin Stoltzfus as it is betting on Punahele Soriano going out there and getting a 100-point performance.
Yeah, I like Punahele Soriano, and I like the camp. I love Extreme Couture. I think that he's underperformed in certain situations. Massive power guy. Was a guy that, has been able to end fights relatively quickly because of his power. As he gets stretched over 15 minutes, you've seen that he is somewhat susceptible to takedowns despite having a good wrestling background. If you have a guy that can chain wrestle really well, you can beat Punahele Soriano. We saw Roman Kopylov finish him. That was beautiful. So that seems like somewhat of an anomaly. Brendan Allen and Nick Maximoff just completely outworked him. The fight against Dolce Lugambula is a guy that I think is really low level, and he made it a little interesting. And Puna eventually did get the finish in the second round, but I was hoping that was going to be a little bit easier, especially because they trained with one another. But who knows? Maybe they were too friendly. I think Puna wins, but I do think that Dustin Stoltzfus from a takedown aspect can make things interesting. I don't like him. I don't like him to win the bout, but I can see him possibly hugging Punahele Soriano for long enough to make him not optimal. But ultimately, I do think Punahele Soriano finds a finish at 9,400. This is a guy who scored 87 against Dolce Lugambula, and then his other victories in the UFC, 123 and 127, Oscar Pejota and Dusko Todorovic. So if he scores a first-round KO, my man will probably be in that 120-point territory. I'm thinking it's second round. So give me Punahele Soriano inside the distance, 9,400. But yeah, I just think he's a little expensive, especially when I hate a lot of underdogs.
Yeah, no, I get you. It's where when I was hand building a cash lineup, I kind of started with Deiveson Figueiredo, and I was able to work it up to it. I mean, there is some high end options that I do scare. We're going to talk about Zach Reese here in a little bit. That's a high end option that definitely concerns me. Next up, we got a female matchup. We got Julia Avila taking on Miesha Tate. Miesha Tate is a plus 120 betting underdog, minus 140 for Julia Avila. Avila A700 on DK, $17 on FanDuel. Tate 7,500 DK, $12 on FanDuel. A lot of speculation out there about this matchup and kind of the future of both fighters. In terms of this one, Tate did make weight, right as you said, make it right there at the buzzer to make weight here. But this is a matchup that for GPPs, Pete, I'm just not all about.
Yeah, I mean, I am. And the only reason I am is because I'm desperate for some underdogs. And, they both have so many intangibles attached to them. Like Julia Avila coming off of a knee injury, I believe it was her ACL, pregnancy, so having a baby, absence from the cage, being over 200 pounds. I mean, that's all understandable. You had a kid. Now cutting down 135 pounds. It's been some time. But, man, her last fight was in 2021 against Yulia Stoliarenko, who very dangerous early, super volatile as the fight goes on. So, in any of these fights, probably the most impressive win is in Avila's debut against Pani Kianzad, who's a fighter that I think is pretty solid. Pretty solid everywhere. But Gina Mazzani, not impressive. And Yulia Stoliarenko, okay. That's okay. But losing to Sajara Eubanks, getting outworked in the third round by a cardio-deficient fighter is somewhat of a red flag for me. And I know that Avila has aggressive striking, solid jiu-jitsu, solid wrestling offensively. I think that she swims her punches and she blitzes forward a lot, which could actually make things a little bit easier for Miesha Tate to land takedowns. Whereas Lauren Murphy down a weight class, experimenting a weight class below, sticking and moving, defending takedowns well, reversing position, makes things a little bit harder. But we even saw Miesha Tate look damn good in her return when she beat Marion Renault. Absolutely dominated her. Renault's always struggled against people who can mix it up. But going up 5 rounds against Ketlin Vieira, landing a takedown and doing quite well, having 3 minutes of control time, landing 122 of 270 significant strikes, scoring 63 in a loss. She went 25 minutes with Ketlin Vieira, who's one of the best women's mixed martial artists on the planet. So I hold that in pretty high regard. I understand that she's talking about retirement and says that she could always be one fight away, and there's speculation that this is it. Listen, I'm desperate for an underdog. It's women's MMA. Avila has as many red flags as Miesha Tate. I don't necessarily understand the difference in the odds. I think it's because Miesha Tate went down to 125, lost, and is now coming back. So ultimately, people think that the fighter who's accustomed to 135 is going to win. I just think it's close, man. I think it's close. It's going to be a dogfight. Miesha Tate's going to throw. She's a part of Extreme Couture. Give me her to edge out Avila in a decision. And I think it's going to be an ugly fight. But I think that Miesha Tate, if I'm wrong, I'm okay with it because this week's the underdogs are awful, in my opinion. Yeah, so give me Miesha Tate here at 7,500.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of GPP, if you told me I had to roster one of these fighters, I would much rather roster Miesha Tate than I would rather roster. Yeah, raise that seat up a little bit, okay?
Yeah, bro, I'm gonna throw it out the window in 2 minutes.
I saw you sinking down a little bit.
Bro, I'm gonna throw this seat out the window in 2 minutes because
I was like, hold on. I'm pretty sure I don't have Pete's head framed that low in the shot.
No, bro. Listen, if you've been a fan or a part of the community for a while, you guys have seen me sinking in this chair for years upon years. So, yeah. I mean, this ain't nothing new. I mute myself. I bring my chair back up, and then we get right back to business. That's just how it is here at the Fight HQ podcast. And if you're still hanging out and listening to us, you can hit that like button. Try to get us over 100 likes. We really appreciate that. Apologies for the delayed show this week. But yeah, if you could subscribe to the channel, share our content, we really appreciate it. Engage with us in the Discord, which is free to join. It's a hell of a time here at Fight HQ, and we're really appreciative for everything.
The next fight, I feel like if we're going to label a fight a boom bust fight of the week, I feel like this is going to be that fight of Zach Reese and Cody Brundage. Reese a minus 245 betting favorite, plus 200 for Cody Brundage. Brundage is 6,900 on DK, $9 on FanDuel. Reese 9,300 DK, $20 on FanDuel. And Pete, I thought you really labeled out earlier on the show. Like, this does feel like it's a contender series type matchup. Yeah. I mean, I think you look at questions on both sides of the equation, and I've had a chance to talk to Cody many times. I mean, look, like the one fight that always sticks out to me is that Dolce fight where Dolce is just, I mean, piece him apart, and then he, for whatever reason, has just awful fight IQ, goes for a takedown, and kudos to Cody Brundage for catching him in the submission there. And on the other side with Zach Reese, it's like you see the great upside of a potential first-round finish, but it's also that thought process of we've seen Cody be able to weather storms, and if he weathers a 5-minute storm from Zach Reese, what does a second-round Zach Reese look like?
Yeah, we really don't know. We really don't know. And I was just looking real quick on social media to see where Zachary Reese trains, and he did majority of this camp at Bang Tao. And Bang Tao's a phenomenal gym. And I saw Andre Petrosky was a training partner there with him as well. So, it's interesting, right? Like, if he's training with Andre Petrosky, that I do like the fact that either Petrosky's ragdolling you in practice or you're going to get better. And you might not have any option other than getting better training with Andre Petrosky, who's just a suffocating grappler, whereas Cody Brundage can get takedowns. And I think that's where he can win this fight. So, like, as a punt play, why do I feel like I want to get to more Cody Brundage? Like, if I'm playing 150, let me see what this ownership's at for Cody Brundage. Yeah, I'm probably getting at least 5 to 10% more ownership on Cody Brundage than what the field is if I'm playing 150. I haven't decided if I am this week. But this fight seems like a stay away. I think the way that I was talking about it earlier, whereas Brundage will get a takedown early, look really smart as the fight goes on, weather an early storm. As the fight goes on, I just think he might make a boneheaded decision and either get hurt on the feet or subbed. And the issue is where he does seem apt to tap really quickly. This kid, Zachary Reese, has some solid jiu-jitsu off of his back. So I really don't know what to tell you guys other than this is a volatile fight. I hope it was scrapped. It's not. I'm still picking Zachary Reese to win the bout. But as far as like absolute dart throws to win a decision, Cody Brundage is a part of a really good team. And this will be his last opportunity in UFC if he does not win. I can almost assuredly say that. So, yeah, I don't know what to do with this fight. Give me Zachary Reese to win. I think he finds a way to win, but I'm going to pivot elsewhere. I just think it's going to be a super weird situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you're not going to feel good about putting Cody Brundage in just because of the way his UFC run has gone to this point. I mean, look, you do love the fight camp that he's at, and I think if you're going to roster Cody Brundage, I think the thought process has to be that you feel like he's going to get this fight into the second round. I mean, this is one of those things of like, this could be a over 1.5 rounds. I mean, and this could be a potentially a great live betting situation of seeing how the first round goes and maybe do a live bet on one way or the other. I mean, I do feel like if this hits a second, even hits the third round, I do feel like it's a little bit of advantage for Cody Brundage. Next up, we got Drakkar Klose taking on Joe Solecki. Solecki a plus 110 betting underdog, minus 130 for Drakkar Klose. Klose is 8,300 DK, 15 on FanDuel for Solecki, 7,900 on DK, $13 on FanDuel. And, we've seen Joe Solecki be able to use that grappling game that he does have. And, when we're looking at, GPP upside, Solecki is one of those guys, and just thinking about, man, we've seen him be able to control guys on the mat. Is if he can somehow get that submission, he may be kind of that sneaky GPP play this week, Pete.
Yeah, he's sneaky, but this is a fight I'm really struggling with. And I think that whenever people or analysts they're not honest with you in saying that they struggle with certain bouts, I think it's just like a red flag. And Jason and I tell you all the time about how we're struggling with certain fights and how they're going to go. I think that this could go many ways. Drakkar Klose is clearly the better striker. And it's almost similar to the Kelvin Gastelum and Sean Brady fight, whereas Joe Solecki is a suffocating grappler who likes to take the back. We have a very dangerous opponent in Drakkar Klose on the feet. What happens? What happens if Solecki is forced to stand up? I think that Solecki is going to lose majority of the bout on the feet. Mm-hmm. The issue is I've seen Drakkar Klose get his back taken. And that's the issue here, is that you have Solecki. He's a very good back taker. And when you have a guy who's very skilled at getting to the back, he'll even get the back from side control. He passes well. He does everything really well. The second you kind of overcommit to one side or another, he's looking to take your back. And that's where I don't think that he'll necessarily finish Drakkar Klose, but I think that he could put him in some compromising situations. Whereas Klose is having to come back and try to win rounds, and it comes down to, again, damage versus control. But I don't know, man. Solecki had Carl Deaton's back for the whole first round, didn't get it until the second round. He looked really good in doing so. He had Jim Miller, this is years ago now, in 2021, in a ton of bad spots. I thought that he was actually going to be able to finish Jim Miller. He wasn't. Drakkar Klose hasn't been subbed. He's only been knocked out. I don't know. I really don't know how this is going to go. I think that the grappling control of Sean Brady and Solecki could actually limit the upside of their opponents. Does that make sense? Where it's they could have control time, and that control time could limit the finishing upside and also the volume of their opponent. And that's why you could have some lower scores than typical fights for those fighters. So I guess I'm going to pick Drakkar Klose to win a decision. But this is one of the most difficult fights for me to break down. And I think Solecki should be one of the most exposed underdogs on the slate, given his knack for taking the back and grappling skills.
Yeah, I mean, to me, in terms of rostering one guy or the other, I'd much rather get to rostering a Joe Solecki in this situation, just because of that control time, points that you could get, takedowns. He's not your typical, double leg, single leg guy takedown. So, Drakkar Klose, I think the question is he probably wants to try to keep this fight on the feet and try to pick Joe Solecki apart across the feet. Next up, we got Rodolfo taking on Poterio. Poterio plus 300 betting underdog, plus 400 for Rodolfo. Rodolfo $9,600, $23 on FanDuel, and then Poterio 6,600 DK, $8 on FanDuel. I mean, look, Pete, I see the upside of Ihor, first round upside, but that's about it I see from him in this one.
Yeah, I think that the odds are correct. It's just that they've been overblown. Rodolfo Bellato at 9,600 for his UFC debut is a little much. I mean, we saw him on the Contender Series against Vitor Petrino. He was winning that bout, and then he got knocked out again against Vitor Petrino. That's twice now. But he's very good on the feet. I think that, standing up, he is somewhat on the center line, so he can be hit with counter shots. I think that he has very, very good grappling as well, so good jiu-jitsu skills. He can mix things in really well. It just comes into a price point situation. Is Ihor Poterio a guy that can actually knock him out? I don't think so, but I also didn't think that he was going to knock out Shogun Rua. But to that point, it is Shogun in 2023. But my goodness, how the mighty have fallen. They tried to give Shogun a layup, and he was unable to pick that win up. So I'm backing Rodolfo Bellato here. Massive price tag, should be 100 points. Anything less than 100 points at 9,600 is a massive disappointment. So I'm probably going to pivot to other fighters within that upper 8,000 range just because of the price and because of I don't want to roster Cody Brundage in a single entry personally. So there aren't too many other fighters that low on the salary that I'll get to be able to give me the flexibility to get to Adolfo Bellato at 9,600. So Bellato wins, Bellato inside the distance. But yeah, I'm not going to back Ihor Potieria until he gives me a reason to.
No, exactly. No reason to back him in that situation. Next up, we got Wellington Thurman taking on Jared Gooden. Gooden is a plus 170 betting underdog, minus 200 for Thurman. Thurman, 9,000 DK, $19 on FanDuel. And for Gooden, he's 7,200 DK, $11 on FanDuel. I will say this. I will give Jared Gooden's management a lot of kudos for getting him these opportunities. I just think this is Wellington Thurman's fight to lose.
Yeah, I actually really like Wellington Thurman here. I'll tell you, I really do. Teixeira MMA is a team that I think is somewhat on the rise, and here in Connecticut, I'm not just being biased. Rodolfo Bellato is actually kind of cross-trained at Teixeira MMA as well. So between Alex Pereira, Glover Teixeira, and now Wellington Thurman, there are a lot of fighters there that you don't even know about that are really, really good. I think that the striking development that I've seen from Wellington Thurman on social media is massive. I think that his Muay Thai has gotten exponentially better since he's trained at Teixeira MMA. It's so cool because you had Teixeira MMA, who was known as a boxing and jiu-jitsu gym, now start incorporating a lot of Muay Thai because of what Alex Pereira has brought to the table. So you're seeing this evolution within this Connecticut MMA scene. I'm telling you, I think Wellington Thurman might be one of my favorite sneaky 9,000 options on this slate. Previously against Rainey Brown and Andre Petrosky, he was not impressive, and he was only able to land one takedown, and that was against Andre Petrosky. But I actually think that this might be a breakout performance. I think Jared Gooden is super hittable. I think that outside of the Nick Stolze fight, that he's live to just get beaten everywhere, from takedowns to on the feet. I think he's going to get knocked out, if I'm being honest. I think that his head is so stationary that it makes it very easy for his opponents. And I've seen him wobble and have shaky legs numerous times from the regional scene to the UFC. I like Jared Gooden, but I just do not like this matchup. I think that Wellington Thurman is going to finish him, and I actually think he's going to probably have his highest score inside the UFC yet, because 73, 74, 81 is not going to cut it at 9,000. I think we need 100 plus, and my bold call of the week is that Wellington Thurman is going to do that. He's going to get 100 plus.
Yeah, I like Thurman in this spot as well. I mean, to me, if you tell me I can play one 9,000 option, I think Wellington Thurman would be my one 9,000 option I would be looking to play. Then our opening matchup of the night, Jamey-Lyn Hort taking on Veronica Hardy. Hardy is a plus 155 betting underdog, minus 185 for Hort. Hort is 8,500 DK, $18 on FanDuel. Hardy is $7,711 on FanDuel, Pete.
Another fight I'm struggling with, because in women's MMA, I take physicality into great consideration, and Jamey-Lyn Hort is massive. I do not know how these two fighters are in the same weight class. I really don't. It's quite interesting. We did have Jamey-Lyn Hort step up on a weight class higher against Haley Cohen, and she was able to pick up the win. She scored 67 in that fight. The issue here is her knack for throwing kicks and getting them caught. And Veronica Hardy comes from a very talented Taekwondo background where she can kick and catch kicks. Working with Dan Hardy, her husband, is I think it is an X factor. I really do. I think that's a great MMA mind to have in your corner, and in the preparation to a fight. Doesn't necessarily make me pick her. It makes me just think that she's going to have moments and have a good game plan. I still think she can get out muscled. Veronica Hardy really had a breakout performance against Juliana Miller, which really surprised me because maybe I was too high on Juliana Miller coming off the Ultimate Fighter. She looked terrible, and it made Veronica Hardy look like a championship contender. 4-4 in the takedown department there. Top control was 7.5 minutes. Outside striking was great. Footwork was great. She made Juliana Miller look like an amateur. She really did. It was a perfect game plan. Now here against Jamey-Lyn Horth, if they do clinch up, I feel like Horth is just too physical to get taken down from some of these takedown attempts. I think that, her being a brown belt helps as well. So yeah, I'm going to be picking Jamey-Lyn Horth to win a decision, but it's a fight where like I wanted to make a stand one way or another. I wanted to find an underdog, so I was initially on Veronica Hardy, and the more I started to think about, well, what happens when they clinch up, and I don't know, man. I'm siding with Jamey-Lyn Horth at 8,500, but I think that Veronica Hardy for a low-level women's MMA bout, similar to like, Miesha Tate, even though Miesha Tate, that bout's a lot higher level, women's MMA in general needs to be a part of your underdog player pool. It just has to be.
Yeah, we've seen it happen so many times when an underdog comes in and cash. Let's get into our straight-up fight picks here. The main event, I will go with the favorite, Arman Tsarukyan.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Arman Tsarukyan as well.
I will go in the co-main event. Give me underdog number 1. I'm going to say Bobby Green pulls it off.
I'm going to go Jalin Turner.
Give me underdog number 2 in Deiveson Figueiredo.
Deiveson Figueiredo.
This next one I've gone back and forth on. Give me Sean Brady. Don't feel great about it.
Give me Kelvin Gastelum. Don't feel great about it.
Right. Next up, give me Joaquim Silva.
Joaquim Silva.
Give me Punahele Soriano.
Punahele Soriano.
I'll go underdog number 3, Miesha Tate.
Yeah, man. Miesha Tate. Let's go.
Once again, that's no one I don't feel good about, but I gotta go Zach Reese just because I think the striking in the opening round, he takes out Brundage.
Yeah, I'm going to go Zach Reese.
Give me underdog number 4, Joe Solecki.
God. Drakkar Klose, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's, don't feel, I don't know how many times I've got 4+ underdogs I'm taking it here in a straight up pick. So I'll go Rodolfo. I think he wipes it clean.
Yeah, Rodolfo Bellado for me.
Thurman.
Yep, Wellington Thurman for me.
And I'll go Horth, but don't mind Hardy as an underdog play.
Yeah, same. Jamey-Lyn Horth for me.
Get some questions in here. Go over to the score here. I know some questions came in. Value plays underneath 8K on DraftKings, core plays on DraftKings, and FanDuel cheapies. I'll start with the FanDuel cheapies here on this one, Pete. There are, I think, several good options over there. Bobby Green at $12. Deiveson Figueiredo at $12. I don't mind Miesha Tate at $12. Cody Brundage would be a straight-up punt play at $9 over there. I mean, I think there's a lot of good options over there on FanDuel. Looking at cheapies over in terms of DraftKings, Pete, I mean, look, Figueiredo is going to be a popular play. I think if you're looking at some other potential options, I think you got to look at Miesha Tate, potential takedown upside. She racks some points that way. Same as I said on FanDuel, Brundage, that's just a straight-up punt play.
Yeah.
And I don't, if her salary was less than 7,700, I would look at Veronica Hardy, but I just think the salary is a little too high for me.
Yeah, on FanDuel, I don't think you got to get too crazy because you already listed off 2 fighters that are $12 that I like, Figueiredo and Miesha Tate. So I don't think you need to get to the Cody Brundage, as on DraftKings it makes a little bit more sense. A platform that favors grapplers, a platform where the high-priced options are somewhat of a necessity from card to card. That's where a punt play and a loss could actually work out. So I think from under the 8,000 mark, I think that, Bobby Green's going to be – he has a lot going for him in this matchup against Jalin Turner. I'm on the other side of it. Miesha Tate and Figueiredo are kind of like 1 and 2 for me. And then outside of that, it's like, all right, where are you going next? And I think the where you go next is between Veronica Hardy and Solecki. Anything super cheap is just volatile for me. Not a fan of Jared Gooden, not a fan of Clay Guida, not a fan of Dariush, not a fan of Stoltzfus, Poteria, and Brundage is like that question mark. You know what I mean? Like maybe, but I just cannot back him and give you guys a confident stand and say, yeah, put Cody Brundage in your lineup, because I just don't think that he's got it. Whenever it's a gut check, he seems to wilt under pressure.
It's looking at some leverage plays. That was another question that came in. Rob Font, to me, is potentially the leverage play of the week, just because of, I talk about it on the show all the time, of finding those fighters who are like 87, 88 and above, and saying, okay, who's just not getting ownership? To me, that's a Rob Font this week. Kelvin Gastelum could be a very interesting leverage play this week as well, if he's able to score some knockdowns. But I'll say this, my concern with that fight, Pete, is that you don't have takedowns, you don't have knockdowns, and is there enough volume to really make him optimal?
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but like, I don't think that he should be on the bottom end, the bottom 10, as far as ownership's wide. We're talking about a pick'em fight, guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's a pick'em, and a lot of times we see like just odds and ownership attract to the hyped up prospects. I think it is a buy low spot for Sean Brady. I do, but I think that he has to answer some questions, and the striking questions are huge.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Takedown upside in terms of this one. Like, how do you not look at Deiveson Figueiredo after what we saw happen in Rob Font's last fight?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah,
it's a very good point. Rodolfo Bellato, next to his striking and everything, Wellington Turman. I actually think Miesha Tate, that's her way to win the bout. Like, she has to get takedowns. Like, her standing on the outside, that's a fight that tilts in Avila's favor. She needs to land takedowns and put her on her back. So I think that she's in a good spot. So for underdogs with takedowns, it clearly is Miesha Tate and Deiveson Figueiredo. And then I guess it's Solecki too, right? Like, yeah, I'm sure that's who you're gonna say, because Solecki needs to do that. He cannot strike with Drakkar Klose.
No question. Next one is about ranking the 9K options. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got 6 9K options. I mean, look, I think, like, if I'm starting going 6 and up, Pete, I think I'm looking at putting Reese. I would probably go Silva 6, Reese 5. Then I'd probably go Bellato 4, Soriano 3, Tsarukyan 2, and Thurman 1.
Yeah, all right. So going back, I'm slightly different than you. I'm going to say Zach Reese is the worst one, just because I just don't know what he's going to look like. So I'm going to say that he's 6. I'm going to say that Soriano's 5 for me. And then I'm going to say Joaquim Silva is 4, Bellato's 3, Wellington Turman's 2, and Tsarukyan's 1.
One question was over in the YouTube chat was asking about FanDuel captain options, and really, I would say this: when it comes to FanDuel, I think sometimes you just can't overthink it in terms of captain. You just got to kind of go out there, and to me, my top 2 I'd be looking at would be Thurman and Soriano. Soriano's $21, Thurman's $19, so maybe go Thurman just to save yourself $2 over there. But to me, I just don't want to overthink it.
What's Tsarukyan's captain?
Tsarukyan is, I think, 22.
Yeah, I'm putting him in the captain. I try to put the best plays in the captain. I used to do it where, like, you put the value spots, and I try to put who you think's going to score the most points, like, on the entire slate. You may be wrong, but I would say percentage wise and probability wise, play the probability game, and I think that Tsarukyan probably has the highest chance of scoring the most on the entire slate.
Looking over at PrizePicks, we start to wrap up the show. Looking at the takedowns, we've only got 3 props out there on takedowns. We got Arman Tsarukyan 2.5 takedowns, Sean Brady 1.5 takedowns, Wellington Turman 1.5 takedowns. I mean, the Tsarukyan one, I think that's a underplay more than it is an overplay in terms of that, or more or less. They're more or less. I would go personally. I would lean less than 2.5 takedowns on Tsarukyan. The Sean Brady 1.5, man, that's an interesting one. That's
why I'm like, it is interesting. I think, like, Does he need more than one if he gets one? I think that he might. The X factor is also that Kelvin Gastelum's at fight ready. So, like, that's a tremendous wrestling camp. It really is. So that's why I really think it's a tough matchup for Sean Brady.
Yeah, looking over at fight time, I would say my leans would be more than 12.5 fight time minutes on Rob Font, more than 10.5 fight time minutes on Jalin Turner. And then, man, there's some lines that, I would probably say the less than 14 3/4 fight time minutes on Wellington Thurman. That may be the one you want to attack there when it comes to the fight time minutes. Looking over a significant strike prop, the Rob Font one is 65.5. If Rob can keep it on the feet and that thing goes 15 minutes, Rob's style tells me that's more than 65.5.
He might land 60 jabs.
But the problem is he might get taken down and he lands absolutely nothing, like we saw against Corey Sandhagen. The 6, 7.5 significant strikes on Tsarukyan is kind of interesting. If you think that thing hits the 4th round and he doesn't really try to go the takedown route, that's kind of an interesting one there. Nothing else really sticks out to me in terms of significant strikes. And looking over at fantasy score in this one, just because of the way I like Bobby Green, so I would probably say less than 92.5 fantasy score on Jalin Turner. But if Jalin Turner wins, I very well could see him smashing that if he gets a stoppage. Font 77.5. Look, if you think Rob Font's going to win, I think you go more than 77.5 just because of how he could win that fight. But I would probably be looking more to attack like the Wellington Thurman, 85.5, more than that. Soriano, more than 93.5 would be the ones that I would be trying to attack.
Yeah, that Turman one sounds juicy. I like that a lot. I really, really like that a lot. And in his wins, 81, 73, and 74, I think he's fighting one of his worst opponents yet. So I think he's going to get way more than that.
And, of course, this is we'll be here for the next 3 weeks or 2 more weeks after this. Of course, you got the Apex card next week. That's headlined by Chris Gutierrez and Song Yadong. Of course, that was a fight card that was supposed to be taking place over there in Shanghai, China. That fight is not taking place. By the way, Eddie Alvarez is a plus 260 betting underdog against Mike Perry tomorrow night there. Mike Perry minus 350, at least. BetMGM appears to be the only sports book that has odds out on this one. And then, of course, we got the pay-per-view next week. In 2 weeks from now, Leon Edwards and Colby Covington. I'm going to tell you, Pete, I'm going to be all over Colby Covington in that one.
Yeah, me too.
I'm actually kind of surprised to see he's a betting underdog in that one.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just saying, hey, Ian Gary, good thing you're not fighting Colby Covington, or fight week could be a rough week for you.
Yeah. Oh, my God. What a mess of a situation, huh? So much drama in MMA right now.
So if you remember, Ian Gary walked to a fight with a T-shirt with Jeff Neal's mugshot. I've seen a couple people say that Vicente Luque should walk into the pre-fight press conference with a certain book T-shirt.
I like that. Hey, man, you get what you give. That's
I don't know if people have noticed this. And look, I know it's open season on Ian Gary right now. Leon Edwards team's like, no, you can't train here. Brennan Allen comes out and says, yeah, he got KO'd at Kill Cliff and he probably shouldn't talk. I was like, this is getting
the issue is you start, like he also said in an interview that he doesn't need coaches. He's going to tell people what he needs and they're going to do is what he says because he's the one that steps in the octagon. It's like, my man, I get what you're saying. But if you think you know everything, then, the fighter should have a lot of say in everything that goes into a camp. 100%, because you know what you need. But the fact that you're just – I don't like how he says that. And I disagree with him because you need other people that are smarter than you. You ain't the smartest person.
A different set of eyes, no matter what we're talking about, to me, is always a very good thing to have. No matter. Look, as part of my daytime job is creating restaurant menus and editing restaurant menus, and sometimes you miss a typo, and that's why you need someone with another set of eyes to look at something. And look, it's when you say that, the name that immediately pops in my head, Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah, I mean, and look where his career's gone. You know, I mean, like in any sport, that's why, like, when you're in a position, you need people to overlook you as well. Like, a quarterback needs an OC. A quarterback needs a quarterback coach. You know what I mean? Like, you need other people to help you.
By the way, Patty Pimblett, do not call out Bobby Green.
Yeah, no.
If you told me Bobby Green's fighting Patty Pimblett, I already tell you where my mind's going. I'm all over
Bobby Green. Yeah. I'm already over Bobby Green there, right there.
I do not think the UFC would book that matchup. I really don't.
Yeah.
I literally, yeah.
DraftKings Sportsbook has BKFC. I'm looking at him right now. Eddie Alvarez plus 225. Beck Rawlings plus 300 against Christine Ferreira. I mean, I'm not trying to play a bet on this stuff, but maybe I might have to.
P's going to text me all right. Hey, bro, I've got a 3-fighter parlay on BKFC going right now.
Yeah, I might. You'll see it in our Discord if you guys join our free Discord. So, yeah, I mean, but thanks for joining us today. I mean, it's going to be an exciting card tomorrow. Happy we were able to actually pull the show off. And hopefully our stands are correct on who we like and who we don't like. And,
of course, I was thinking about our DraftKings contest. I was like, me and Pete pretty much give you a good idea what our life is going to be.
We're at a disadvantage. We're at a disadvantage in our contest because you already know where I'm at. So you just can fade my picks a lot of times. But I'm also not going to do it. I'm also not going to give picks and then like put out a super contrarian lineup in our contest. I'm just going to, I don't know. I'm gonna put something in there that I believe in. So I'm not gonna steer you away.
Yeah, there's sometimes I'm like, man, Pete was really high on that one guy, man.
Yeah, see, Jason's over there playing the game.
I'm sitting there going, you know, I go, man, there might be a lot of people now. Pete, I might be able to play the other side. I'm not saying I do it. But you know there's people in our contest that are going, oh, Pete really liked that guy. All right.
Yeah, 100%.
Jason really liked that guy. Yeah,
we fade or pivot. Yep.
We are totally at a disadvantage in that contest.
100%. 100%.
But yeah, get in that contest. Of course, lock is 4 p.m. Well, it might actually be a little bit later since you lost the fight. Maybe lock ends up being 4:30. But as of right now, lock it tomorrow is at 4 o'clock. Of course, as always, we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the Fight HQ podcast. Of course, you can always check it out on YouTube. Also, you can check it out over on the podcasting platforms if that's your preferred way to take in our podcast. It's available at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of the podcasting platforms over there. So we appreciate everyone tuning in for this episode of the Fight HQ podcast.